Hello everyone, I'm Harmony. I'm one of the student reps on the Board of Education and an organizer in New Haven. Like Francesca said, a couple reminders. This is not an official public hearing, but we will be acting as if it were. Please keep your testimony to 3 minutes. Hate speech will not be tolerated. And if you still want to sign up to give your testimony, please approach Jesse over here with someone who can vouch for you. The first speaker will be Freda B, and then the next three speakers, Allah H, Miranda R, and Carolina K. Freda?
Okay, I didn't know I was going first. Hi. My name is Frida, and I live in New Haven, Ward 17. I work in New Haven as a nurse. I attend Yale, and I'm part of New Haven Healthcare Workers for Palestine. I'm very happy to be here today to speak with y'all because my alder, Sal Punzo, has made it clear that he does not care what I have to say.
Shame!
None of the alders do. They do not exist to represent me or listen to me. The Board of Alders exists to serve the interests of Yale, the landlords, the business owners, and the rest of the ruling class in New Haven.
That's right.
Quite frankly, I feel fine that I'm not afforded the opportunity to speak to them directly. Because anyone who holds power and allows the continuation of the houselessness crisis, who supports the over-policing of New Haven residents, who won't do everything in their ability to end the ongoing genocide while they represent a city that gives $1.8 million per year to the Israeli military, is not someone who cares about anything I have to say. If we cannot force the Board of Alders to face the responsibility they hold, we can at least face it ourselves. It is clear now that elected officials, international courts of justice, the United Nations, and arguments backed by colonial discourses of human rights will not end this genocide. The responsibility falls upon us and our movements. I am here today because I only support the call for a ceasefire alongside the call to lift the blockade on Gaza. To release all political prisoners imprisoned in Israel. To end all occupation of Palestinian land and to end all financial support of Zionism from Western governments. I urge everybody to use whatever means are available to them to act right now. Participate in the global boycott, divest, and sanctions movement. Stop the flow of cargo and arms from Connecticut to Israel. Bring your demands into your union, your workplace, your classroom, your neighborhood, and act on the calls for solidarity from workers in Palestine. I'd like to end my testimony with a quote from the late Aaron Bushnell. And I quote him not to celebrate his martyrdom, but to honor his choice to not stand passively in the face of ongoing genocide. Before his death, he wrote, "Many of us like to ask ourselves, what would I do if I was alive during slavery, or the Jim Crow South, or apartheid? What would I do if my country was committing genocide? The answer is you're doing it right now." Thank you. Thank you, Frida. Up next we have Miranda. Apologies, just needed to pull this up. So, I'd like to say to our Board of Alders, I'm Miranda Rector, a resident of Ward 7 here in New Haven. I've lived in this beautiful city for nearly 8 years. It's a place that I've been proud to call home. However, I would be even more proud if my elected officials did the right thing by listening to the vast majority of constituents who, like me, are calling for a ceasefire resolution. It's been 149 days since the State of Israel began its most recent siege on Gaza. Homes, mosques, and churches, universities and schools, and other central institutions have been raided and destroyed. 20 out of 22 hospitals have been bombed. Life-saving humanitarian aid has been blocked from entering, or worse, people seeking that aid have been slaughtered. Over 30,000 people have been killed, and nearly 75,000 more are expected to die by August if there is not an immediate and permanent ceasefire. But as elected officials, you should all know this already. No statistic or horrific story should be news to you. What you should also know by now is that the United States is funding this massacre. Over $1.8 million of New Haven residents' federal tax dollars have funded the weapons being used to destroy communities and take the lives of innocent civilians in Gaza. We're asking of you, as the people we put into power, to be our voice in demanding a ceasefire. The question of a ceasefire resolution is a question of whether we have true leaders in our city government. It is a failing of leadership to not take a moral stance on this issue while so many of your constituents are making sacrifices to speak up. People like me and the others at this hearing have faced harassment campaigns and death threats, lost jobs and opportunities, and pushed ourselves to the limits of our physical, financial, mental, and emotional well-being. These are people who live, work, volunteer, run businesses, shop, make art, study, host community spaces, raise children, and make New Haven a great place to live. We have been holding the tens of thousands of Palestinian martyrs in our hearts for months now. It is past time for our city leadership to echo our call for a ceasefire. Finally, as a Jewish person with so much love and adoration for my faith and my community, I am begging my representatives here to recognize those of us who refuse to let this massacre continue in our name. I am represented by you, not by a foreign government or other institutions. It is also a privilege and a responsibility to remind you that you also represent countless Palestinian, Muslim, and Arab American community members directly impacted by the siege on Gaza. Listen to us, listen to all of your constituents who with moral outrage and tremendous courage are demanding this resolution. Thank you.
The next speaker is Ala H, and then Carolina K, Phil B, and Jesse G.
I stand before you today not just as a resident of New Haven and not just as a law student at Yale University, but as a Palestinian who has witnessed and experienced the brutality of the conflict firsthand. As a Palestinian who grew up in the shadow of this violation of human rights. As a Palestinian who lived through the Second Intifada and the 2006 Israel-Lebanon war and the tensions over Gaza since 2007 and the May 2021 Israel's violence against Palestinians. And as a Palestinian who is now witnessing the genocide in Gaza, exceptional in Israel, a tragedy that tears families apart and shatters the dreams of generations. I stand before you today as a believer in justice. As a resident of New Haven and a law student, I have come to deeply value the principles of democracy, of justice, and the rule of law. These principles are not just abstract. They are intended to be the foundation upon which our society is built and upon which our society stands. The draft resolution for a ceasefire in Gaza, presented to you more than 3 months ago by a coalition of activists and organizations, embodies the very heart of democracy, a call to action rooted in the collective will of the people, a proof to our shared commitment to peace and to human rights. And yet, despite the urgency of the situation and the overwhelming support from this community, the resolution remained blocked. The resolution remained ignored. As a law student, I have been taught to believe in the power of the legal system to bring positive change, to uphold the rights and dignity of all individuals, regardless of their background and regardless of their circumstances. The people of Gaza are not just numbers. They are not just headlines. They are human beings with hopes, dreams, and aspirations for a better future. It is our duty as residents of this town to stand in solidarity and to speak out against injustices. New Haven Board of Alders, please don't fail us. Please don't fail to act. Don't fail to acknowledge these calls for peace. and don't fail to uphold the values of justice and equality that this town stands for. We, the people of New Haven, refuse to stand passively while lives are lost, while families are torn apart, and while the flames of conflict continue to consume our world. We refuse to accept this reality, where the powerful dictate the terms of peace and the oppressed are left to suffer in silence. As a Palestinian, I can attest to the serious impact it has had on my life and the lives of countless others. As a Palestinian, I learned early on what it means to fear for the safety of my family on a daily basis. Waking up each morning to the reality of violence and oppression, I have witnessed the profound impact it has on our communities. The constant fear of displacement, the constant sense of insecurity have profoundly affected our being every day. These personal experiences have shaped my understanding of the urgency for a ceasefire in Gaza now. And today, we reclaim our voices. And today, we demand justice for Gaza, justice for Palestine, and justice for all who have been suffering from this war. We demand action, and we demand it now. The New Haven Board of Alders, please lend your support by passing a resolution advocating for permanent ceasefire in Gaza. Ceasefire now.
Carolina K. Once more, Carolina K. Next speaker, Phil B.
Stage fright.
Phil B. Jesse G. And the next speakers after that will be Yusuf, Sammy A, and Izzy G.
Hi, good evening. Thank you all so much for coming out. I stand here as a current resident of Ward 25 and with 20 years of experience in living in New Haven. I am a Jew, was bar mitzvahed at Congregation Beth El Kester Israel over in Westville. And I would like to speak to you tonight on the chant that of in our thousands, in our millions, we are all Palestinians. And I would like us to reflect on that what we see in Palestine at the immensely accelerated rate, the destruction of housing, the profound loss of life, the targeting of health and economic infrastructure, the targeted killings of intellectuals, journalists, health professionals, and the indiscriminate killing of families occurs at the slower rate at the heart of the empire. What we see in Palestine is what occurred in the United States 200, 300 years ago to our own indigenous population, and has been occurring throughout history, performed by the governments that have purported to serve the masses. In Palestine, we have the opportunity to fight for people who still are here. I went to school in Connecticut and never met an indigenous person until I went to college in the Midwest. I never met an indigenous person. We took a field trip to the Mashantucket Pequot Museum, and that was the first time that I assume there were indigenous people working there and staffing the museum, but that was the first time that I was exposed to it, and I did not meet an indigenous peer until I traveled 1,500 miles to go to college. We have an opportunity to stand with indigenous people who are being corralled and indiscriminately killed by a U.S.-funded oppressor. This is what we see again and again and again in the process of violent colonization. And what does it come back to New Haven? This is our fight. This is all misappropriation of funding. Our country pours money that could be going into health infrastructure, that could be going into housing, that could be going into developing our communities and supporting our people here, into war and death and destruction, here and abroad. Free Palestine, abolish the prisons, undo the borders, and work here in these individual small ways on peaceful step forward.
Carolina K.
Carolina.
You said?
Thank you. For those who know me, this is just an unprepared statement, so I'm speaking for myself. Now, I will not have to go into the horrors that are going on. These have been eloquently expressed. Let me say that there is a big majority is forming in the U.S. for it. There is an international consensus for a ceasefire. A ceasefire is a cessation of hostilities. There should be nothing controversial about ceasing hostilities and armed action.
That's right.
If human decency calls for a ceasefire and end to hostilities, parliamentary ethics demands at the very least, a hearing, if not the passage of this proposal.
That's right.
The next speaker is Sammy A.
Hello, my name's Sammy. I'm a New Haven resident from Ward 1. I'm also a member of Socialist Alternative. So why are we still here? How is it that the Board of Alders have stalled on the ceasefire resolution for 3 goddamn months?
Say it.
Despite the 68% of Americans that support a ceasefire and hundreds of New Haveners that support a ceasefire. It's because in New Haven, we have some spineless alders who aren't willing to stand up against the enormous pressure from the Democratic establishment and one notoriously powerful Zionist institution. Yeah. Despite the 100+ person disruption of the Board of Alders meeting a month ago, they're continuing to stall. These alders all have one thing in common. They're supported by the Democrats. And withholding even public comment on the ceasefire resolution, they're reflecting the Democrats' support for this massacre and censorship of resistance on a local level. And why is this? Why do Joe Biden and the Democrats, the supposedly progressive party, support massacre? It's because they're a party of big business and imperialism. Just like the Republicans, Democratic candidates receive millions of dollars from AIPAC and weapons manufacturers. People are understanding this. Just last week, 100,000 people from Michigan voted uncommitted in the Democratic primary rather than voting for Biden. But we have to go further. If ending the massacre and the occupation of Palestine is important to us, we must definitively break from the Democrats and build an independent, working-class party that would actually support the anti-war movement and fighting the rising right wing.
Good idea.
Woo! We need a party based on the organized power of workers, students, unions, and social movements that isn't beholden to corporate interests and can actually fight for our demands instead of blocking them at every goddamn turn.
Yes.
Political independence from the parties that are carrying out the war is essential for the anti-war movement to be able to offer a real way forward for workers and young people, and it can't wait. We need to start by refusing all endorsements and donations for candidates who don't support an immediate ceasefire and the ending of all military aid to Israel. Candidates like Rosa DeLauro. We need this on a local and a national level. We should vote for independent presidential candidate, Cornel West, in the general election. He has a strong program on Palestine, demanding a permanent ceasefire, an end to all U.S. aid to Israel, and to funding the massive military budget. If you're interested and want to discuss how we could build a workers' party and most effectively fight for the ceasefire resolution here in New Haven, come out to Socialist Alternative's public meeting happening this Wednesday at 6 p.m. at SCSU. Solidarity.
The next speaker is Izzy G, and after that, Tiff B, Nigel H, and Tegan E. Izzy?
Good evening. I am a New Haven resident, New Haven Public School teacher, and New Haven Public School graduate. And a New Haven Federation of Teachers Union member. I'm here today calling on the Board of Alders to support passing a resolution calling for a permanent ceasefire in Gaza. As an educator, I have a responsibility to speak out against violence, especially violence perpetrated against young people. Since October 7th, at least 30,000 Palestinians have been killed, 12,300 of them children. Of the 71,920 Palestinians injured, 8,663 are children. Schooling in Gaza is decimated. School buildings are destroyed, teachers and students killed. Meanwhile, teachers in Israel are being suppressed, one even arrested for expressing their opposition. Shame. Shame. Peacetime is a myth in a world where the United States drops bombs from Palestine to Yemen to Iraq. As educators who teach peace and who care for young people, we must call for peace, even when it feels untenable. As community members, as organizers, as lawmakers, you all have that same responsibility. Connecticut's Treasury invests $95 million of public employee pension money in hundreds of Israeli companies and in State of Israel bonds. Shame. What would it look like to build a labor movement and to build a community committed not only to workers and residents, but also to all of humanity? What if we refuse to let our prosperity be tied to the destruction of others? What if we decided to use our labor power and our people power to demand divestment from war in Israel and beyond? Hell yeah! As a nation, our defense spending last year was $766 billion. Yay. The U.S. government sends at least $3.8 billion to Israel each year, and our tax dollars are used to kill Palestinian people, destroy their homes, and occupy their land. $1,838,975 of our tax dollars in New Haven were sent to Israel last year. They could have funded public housing for 218 households, free or low-cost healthcare for 639 children, 20 elementary school teachers, yearly solar electricity for over 5,000 households, student loan debt cancellation for 48 students, and a lot of respirator masks. It's hard to read the numbers. While our tax dollars fund bombs, missiles, phosphorus gas, and other tools of genocide, our schools are underfunded. I know that my colleagues, my students, families here in New Haven have many ideas on how this money could be used. For building and HVAC repairs citywide, roofs that don't leak, investments in multilingual language learners, and more school counselors, special education teachers, and librarians, for art supplies and for snacks. That Alders say they support. Beyond New Haven, folks like us have been taking action. Folks who care deeply about the city's... Got it. All right, Alders, do the thing.
The next speaker is Tiff B.
Hi, my name is Tiff. I live in Ward 23. I saw the body of a bulldozed man. The image scarred into my brain and heart, and I've been holding this feeling up pretty close. I have the privilege of putting my phone down, but for the people of Gaza, this is their everyday reality. Emmett Till was a 14-year-old black boy who was abducted, tortured, lynched, and had his body thrown in the Tallahatchie River by white men who accused him of offending a white woman. His mother, so strong, decided on an open casket and said, 2 months ago, I had a nice apartment in Chicago. I had a good job. I had a son. When something happened to the Negroes in the South, I said, that's their business, not mine. Now I know how wrong I was. The murder of my son has shown me what happens to any of us, anywhere in the world, had better be the business of us all. I hope your life, or the life of your family, your friends, or your neighbors, is never subject to being tabled as an agenda item among car taxes, street closures, and parking garages. Maybe Bill Mobley exuded strength and courage when she made her business the business of us all. The people of Gaza have exuded the same strength and continue to do so day in and day out. Your business is my business when we have the same oppressor. And unless we take a stand in fighting back against our oppressor, you're one too. I saw the body of a bulldozed man, his zip tie still intact to what used to be his wrist and feet. When violence, injustice, and terror are allowed anywhere, it allows them to grow. It allows hate to not only be accepted, but expected. When black and brown children flying kites are being shot down, whose responsibility is it to speak up? Whose business is it?
Our business.
May we honor our martyrs, our Emmett Tills, our Trayvon Martins, our Breonna Taylors, our Hibak Ball, who said, in Gaza, in the eyes of God, we've seen a martyr and a witness to the liberation, and we are all waiting for where we will be. Our Ali Abdullahs, our Hazan Nassams, who said, we will not show you any fear or panic. May Allah have mercy on those who are happy with what God has given them of His grace. May we give each other grace. May we all be strong enough to wish peace and mercy on those who have hurt us. I saw the body of a bulldozed man and thought, what if it were me? Would he speak up then?
The next speaker is Nigel H., then Tegan E., Eric G., and an anonymous testimony.
First off, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. It shows you care, and it shows you want to be part of the change. As the atrocity against Palestinians continue, we must stand resolute against apathy and ignorance. We must not forget their sorrow, tears, and blood. We fight for peace, even in this precarious time, because our future and the future of the Palestinian people is free. Liberation for all oppressed people, even through the decay of our democratic institutions. When we, the trampled, downtrodden masses, unite, nothing can defeat us. So we will march, we will chant, and we will sing until we shake the very foundations of this rotten society. Real power rests with us and not those in this building. And so we will stand here and we will protest because they need to hear us and they have not. For once, we will be the change because it starts with every single one of us here. And that's all I have to say. Just thank you for coming, guys.
The next speaker, Tegan E. My bad. Eric G. Eric G.
Yeah, here.
Loading, sorry. So, this speech is not for the Board of Alders, who have shown clearly that they won't listen to a word that we say, but for the activists, the fighters, and the revolutionaries in this crowd. The Jewish Marxist Rosa Luxemburg once said that the most revolutionary thing that you can do is to tell the truth. As those locked in a struggle to free Palestine, we have to see clearly that our efforts have not succeeded thus far. Millions have marched on Washington and around the world against the genocide. At least 50 cities across the U.S. have passed ceasefire resolutions, and over half of Biden's own voters acknowledge what is happening is a genocide. The problem of Palestinian liberation here in the U.S. is not a problem of popularity, it is a problem of the leadership of the working class. The question of Israel is central to U.S. empire, which flows from the interests of U.S. capitalism. The profits of our oil companies, our bankers, and war profiteers all demand an unsinkable aircraft
aircraft carrier in the Middle East. Without an ally like Israel to anchor the U.S.'s position, it would be much weakened. It's for that reason that both parties and the president support Israel to the hilt. The Republicans do so unabashedly, while the Democrats do so blushingly. These are two capitalist parties. These are parties of U.S. imperialism, of Zionism, and of genocide. The Democrats have co-opted the labor leadership. While in places like in India, Spain, and Belgium, workers refuse to handle Israeli weapons, here they fall over themselves to kiss the red, white, and blue. The Democrats have co-opted the movements of the oppressed. During the George Floyd uprising, lest we forget, they made promises and knelt with kente cloths while sicking the police on protesters. They even increased the bus fare here in New Haven. The problem of Palestinian genocide is not a problem that can be solved by putting pressure on this party, as the voters of Michigan showed. Biden is more than willing to sacrifice the election in order to maintain the long-term imperial policy towards Israel. To quote Aaron Bushnell, it's what our ruling class has deemed normal. I look around and I see incredibly self-sacrificing young people and workers willing to go against the grain. People who are willing to put their careers and their bodies on the line for people they've never met. If we stare the truth in the face, though, we have to acknowledge that we lack strong enough weapons to challenge a fundamental U.S. policy as is. The passing of even 1,000 ceasefire resolutions would not end the genocide because we simply do not live in a democracy. The shutting down of ports or highways by activists for a day or even a month would not end the genocide because the state's capacity for violence and the resilience of the logistics networks. What we need is a struggle and a party. It is only when those who make our society run, who build the bombs and load the ships, say no more, that we will end the genocide and all imperialist wars. We need to twist the arm of the ruling class until it snaps. In a word, we need intifada. To do this and to coordinate such a struggle from coast to coast, we need a party with a revolutionary perspective. We need to organize the politically advanced layers of the working class. Join the revolutionary communists of America. Intifada until victory.
The next speaker, Nora, will be reading an anonymous testimony. After that, Katarina P., Andrew R., and Daniel B.
Hey y'all, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, I'm reading an anonymous testimony from a student in New Haven. I'm a New Haven resident in the East Shore neighborhood. I'm here to speak in support of a resolution calling for an immediate and permanent ceasefire in Gaza, and to ask that the Board of Alders assign the resolution to a committee. As a Palestinian, it is deeply important to me that New Haven call for a ceasefire. It pains me to see thousands of my people dying and knowing that the city I call home has not called an end to it. Many cities across this country, ranging from Chicago to Bridgeport, have passed ceasefire resolutions because it has been growingly clear that Israel will not stop targeting civilians in Gaza. The international community, as exemplified by South Africa's case in the ICC, and the thousands of protesters happening around the globe, sympathize with the suffering cry of the Gazans. What happens after the genocide can be complex, but that conversation can only be had after the fact. What must be done now is a unified call to end the genocide. The entirety of the residents in the Gaza Strip have been displaced, many of them my relatives. A distant cousin told us on the phone that his sister, along with all of her family, died under the rubble. Although the actions of Hamas on October 7th can be condemned, they must be placed in the context of a 17-year blockade on Gaza. Additionally, the residents of Gaza cannot be held responsible for Hamas's actions,
and their suffering must be stopped. New Haven should be a beacon of hope, exemplifying what it means to stand for human rights and call for an immediate end to the genocide. I am begging the Board of Alders to support the passing of a resolution calling for a permanent ceasefire in Gaza.
Katarina P. Katarina P. Andrew R. Oh, sorry, never mind.
Hello. My name is Andrew Riker, and I'm a New Haven resident in the First Ward. I'm here to speak in support of a resolution calling for an immediate and permanent ceasefire in Gaza, and to ask for the Board of Alders to assign the resolution to a committee. Over and over and over again, the people of New Haven have declared their demand for peace and their abhorrence of this obscene Israeli aggression, slaughter, massacre, starvation, genocide. I'm not sure how anyone could call it a war. Calling for a ceasefire is not some daring, radical political position. It's the minimum. It's the bare statement that the slaughter must end. To not call for a ceasefire, to resist a ceasefire, now that is a radical political position. In my mind, it is the position of those who have lost their moral center.
Yeah.
To not call for a ceasefire is to accept that it is the natural order of things that Palestinians be murdered en masse, to accept that starvation of certain people, of course not others, is acceptable, in fact desirable. It is to deny the very humanity of the Palestinian people out of fear. Fear of what? That is the question that boggles my mind.
Shame.
Now, to remember, what connection does this have to New Haven? I'll say a few. First, we're all part of the political machine of U.S. hegemony that is facilitating this massacre. It is supposed U.S. interests that encourage this slaughter. As such, we must take our responsibility seriously and act in the ways that we can. In the words of the brave and honorable Aaron Bushnell, we must no longer be complicit in genocide. Second, there are Palestinians in this community. Palestinians that we love. The silence from our representatives feels like a statement of support for the mass death of their friends, families, neighbors, kin, community, people. It is sickening to ignore their struggle, to indicate that they are not welcome here. We love them. Y'all are welcome here. Finally, and forgive my hint of religiosity, declaring a love for life, for the value of life, is vital for our very souls. There is that of God in all of us, and we must listen to their voice. And so tonight, we love life. Everyone here has committed by being here to love life with a vital passion, and we demand the Board of Alders to do the same. Ceasefire now. Thank you.
Alders to immediately pass a resolution in support of an immediate and permanent ceasefire in Gaza. I am from Trieste, Italy, the only city in Italy that had a concentration camp to remove people to Poland. I grew up hearing my grandfather and elders in my city telling me about the horror of genocide.
Louder!
As a child, I kept asking myself the same question. How did people in my city let a genocide happen? How did they go on knowing that people were being killed and starved in Poland and even within our town? Over the last few months, I have realized that the answer is actually pretty simple. They didn't do anything in the face of genocide because they were too busy. Maybe they were volunteers on their city councils, like you, and they just felt like they didn't have time. Maybe they had political careers they were trying to aim for, and they felt that the issue was just too controversial. Maybe they were simply scared to put themselves on the line and lose their connections and power for others that they did not know. I have heard over and over that you are just too busy right now to put a resolution on the agenda. That this is complicated. That you have your own people to think about. As you have heard tonight, 80 U.S. cities have joined the call for a ceasefire. Every city that joins this call makes a difference right now, and Palestinians on the ground remind us of that every day. If there had been a ceasefire last week, the 112 Palestinians who lost their life in the Flower Massacre might still be alive.
Yes.
30,000 people have died in Gaza. Over 1.9 million Palestinians are displaced. And you and I, as U.S. taxpayers, are directly complicit in their deaths. I'd like you to please imagine one of the many children we have heard about asking you to stand up for them. Imagine telling them that you just can't do anything right now because you are too busy. Imagine telling them right now that they will have to wait for food for a few more months because you just don't have time to add them to your agenda. I'd like you to honestly ask yourself why, in the case of Ukraine, you reacted so fast, and why in the case of Palestinians, 30,000 lives are not enough to put a ceasefire resolution. I'd like you to please ask yourself if you can live with deciding that in perhaps maybe the only important decision in your life as an alder, you decided to do absolutely nothing about 30,000 people having died in some of the most horrific conditions we have ever seen. Whether you like it or not, you are siding with violence and genocide by not putting this on the agenda. Free Palestine.
The next speaker is Daniel B., then Leah S., and Jet J.
These people know exactly how we feel and they don't care. This is bigger than a ceasefire resolution. This is a genocide being propped up by an imperialist machine. It is geopolitically and financially advantageous for the U.S. to support the imperialist military machine of Israel as it brutally and ruthlessly crushes a defenseless people out of existence. If we want to do anything about this, and especially if we want to do something about this soon enough to avert a true outright genocide, we need organization. We as American workers are the ones generating the profits that are funding the genocide of the Palestinian people. If we want to stop this, we need to refuse to be complicit ourselves. We need a general strike. We need to be raising strike funds so that people can refuse to work to support this genocide without going hungry or being displaced from their homes. We can shout in the streets all we want. Our voices are meaningless. We as the people, the working people, need to take this into our own hands. We need to talk to our coworkers and explain the situation. We need to organize ourselves and use our most valuable weapon, our labor, to refuse to be complicit in this genocide. The elected bodies that represent us are nothing without the value we generate as a society. If we deprive them of that, they have nothing to stand on and nothing with which to fund a genocide. Has anyone noticed that the energies at these events has been on the decline? Steam outside of a piston box can only disappear into nothing. These congregations are eventually going to dissipate into nothing as nothing changes and this energy continues to fail to be channeled into meaningful action. We need organization and it cannot wait another day. If you agree with me and want to join this fight, find me after this and let's talk about what we can do.
Leah S.
My name is Leah Justinian, and I am a resident of Mansfield Street in New Haven, and I'm here today to urge our alders, who aren't here, to pass the proposed ceasefire resolution. I have lived in New Haven for almost 8 years now, and I am a proud Syrian, Lebanese, and Armenian woman. I am a direct descendant of genocide survivors. I am 3 generations removed from the physical violence that my great-grandparents experienced. The same violence that Palestinians in Gaza are facing right now. But my family still carries that weight today. When I urge a ceasefire, I am thinking not only of the Palestinians who are being murdered right now, but also of those who survived and the children of those who survived and the immense trauma that will follow them for generations. The actions of people half a world away saved my great-grandfather and thousands of others during the Armenian genocide. We, as people half a world away from Palestine, are not powerless to act on behalf of Palestinian liberation. Although the Israeli state has already stolen over 30,000 Palestinians from this earth, we are not powerless to stop the killing. We can't make an impact on the world beyond our neighborhoods, our cities, our states, and we have a moral obligation to do so, particularly in the pursuit of stopping genocide. While we have an obligation to care for others across the globe, we cannot pretend this isn't a local issue. It is a local issue because our state is home to 3 of the 5 largest weapons manufacturing companies in the world, to at least 15 others. Aircraft and weapons made right here in our backyards are being used as we speak to massacre Palestinians by the tens of thousands. It is a local issue because there are Palestinian residents of New Haven whose families, cultures, and spiritual and physical well-being are at risk. It is a local issue because the residents of New Haven are making it a local issue. We will not stand back while our government and our tax dollars fund an armed genocide. We seek a resolution at the local level because this is where we feel our voices, the voices of the people, may actually be heard. While our voices should be heard on the state level and the federal levels, they are too often drowned out by mega corporations like Lockheed Martin that profit from death and war, or lobbying groups like AIPAC. But here in our own town, we refuse to be silenced. We ask that you listen and that you act. Be the representatives we desperately need. To our Board of Alders, I urge you to do your part, to do what you can. This is your chance. Pass the resolution. It is the will of the people, and honestly, it is the bare fucking minimum that you can do in the face of law. Every minute without a ceasefire is a catastrophe. Every life loss is unbearable. All right. We need to let the people of Palestine live, end the siege, and let there be survivors of this genocide. Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Next. Jet J. Then after that, Jenna, Jisoo S, and Joe F.
Hello, my name is Gretchen Ellis, and I'm a New Haven resident living in Ward 2. I'm here today to urge the Board of Alders to pass the ceasefire resolution. And I must ask the Alders, why exactly did you run for this position? If it was to accurately reflect the beliefs and values of your constituents, then why have you ignored hundreds of calls and emails and in-person contacts? If it was to show your leadership and take decisive action to serve your community, then why have you for so long sat on your hands and refused to consider a resolution? If it was because you believe that you have the political courage and moral compass necessary to fight for this community in times of urgent need, then why are you afraid to make public statements condemning the most well-documented genocide in history? If it was to support your constituents, including your many Palestinian constituents, then why have you turned your back in silence while they've lost entire branches of their family trees? Why do you not feel compelled to call for an end to the massacre and violent dispossession of their loved ones? Why will you not take this basic step to reaffirm that you value their lives and the lives of their loved ones, that you cherish them as members of this community, and that you fought for the responsibility to represent? I know that for many of you, you believe that these are the reasons that you ran for this position. We need you to live up to that now. We ask you ask why this is a local issue. The weapons and equipment that Israel uses to carry out its slaughter are paid for and made by people and companies right here in Connecticut. This is a local issue because it is an issue that affects each of us on an individual level. We neglect not just the humanity of Palestinians, but our own humanity when we do not answer the call to fight for justice and liberation for all. When we remain in complicit silence. This is a local issue because as our representatives, you make us complicit in this genocide every moment. You refuse to add our city to the list of cities across this country who understand that they have a moral imperative to stand against genocide with every tool in their toolkit and resource at their disposal. More than 30,000 Palestinians have been killed by Israel. The vast majority of housing and infrastructure has been destroyed. The entirety of the population, that's 2.3 million people, are being systematically starved and deprived of medical aid and basic needs. When will you finally feel called to action? What is the number of people who must be killed for you to finally understand that it is your responsibility to take this step and call for an end to Israel's violence? This is a local issue, so this is your job. This is a job you fought for. You need to do it now. Pass the resolution. Ceasefire now. Free Palestine!
Next speaker is Ximena.
Hey everyone, I will be reading on behalf of Ximena, who couldn't be here. My name is Ximena Lopez Carrillo, and I am submitting this testimony in support of the resolution calling for an immediate and permanent ceasefire in Gaza. As a resident of the Hill in New Haven, and as a member of the Yale chapter of the Faculty for Justice in Palestine, I call upon the Board of Alders to assign the resolution to a committee before more Palestinians continue dying with the political support of our government and our tax dollars. Being legislators elected with our votes, I remind the board of their responsibility to listen to our plight and give New Haven citizens a platform to express our firm rejection of genocide and our condemnation of U.S. Congress for abusing its veto power against the U.S. Security Council resolution. No decent human being should be apathetic to the images of innocent civilians bombarded, massacred, and tortured with starvation. Aside from the unequivocal images of bloodshed that arrive on our devices every single day, the International Court of Justice has found overwhelming evidence that Israel is committing acts of genocide. The ICJ's funding are too numerous to enlist them in this testimony, but the Alders should remember that destroying over 70% of the Gazan territory, indiscriminately killing innocent civilians, denial of humanitarian aid, and destroying humanitarian organizations in Gaza must not be construed as a fight against terrorism. It is an ethnic cleansing that New Haven refuses to be complicit with. The board's silence and consistent stalling of a ceasefire resolution is a demonstration of indifference toward injustice, barbarism, and impunity. So it is time for our legislators to join the 80 cities that have already passed the ceasefire resolution and take a moral stance against this humanitarian catastrophe. As the Alders get ready to meet today and discuss important city affairs, I demand them to publicly recognize New Haven as a city that values human life, no matter the ethnicity, nationality, or religion, that defends democracy, no matter the geographic region, and that upholds the ideals of self-determination this nation claimed to be built upon. Without recognizing these principles through through a ceasefire resolution, the Alders cannot claim to be a board that looks after his constituents. I am calling on the Board of Alders to support passing a resolution calling for a permanent ceasefire in Gaza.
Jisoo S, then Joe F, Roberto B, and Javier V.
Can you hear me okay? Yes. This is for the Board of Alders. It is impossible to do business as usual as our government continues to support a genocide. We are being asked to normalize something deeply unnatural. We are being asked to pretend it is okay to supply weapons and billions of dollars for unspeakable violence, to believe these murders are inevitable. The people of New Haven are being asked to incorporate this into our reality, and this is what it looks like when we refuse. This isn't just about genocide in Palestine. This is about a human limit which should never be crossed again. Never again will we have a happily state-sponsored genocide. If the government wants to sponsor a genocide, it will be clearly against the will of the people. If you say the passing of a ceasefire resolution is symbolic, then fine. Make this a symbol. You're afraid of even that. I want to say to you, the Alders and other figures of authority, you are being lied to. Whether directly or indirectly, you are being presented with the lie that being silent will keep you safe, that you can wait this out and it will blow over, or that the government we are all complicit in will ultimately do the right thing. This is not the first and not the last atrocity in the United States government. They will keep trying this again and again and again. We need to object now, not the next time this happens. The way I see it, our city needs to call for a ceasefire whether or not it sways opinion in higher forms of government. If it does, we will have done the right thing. If it does not, it will show more than ever for us, for the children, and for those who think they can be apolitical about this, that higher forms of government do not represent and do not protect the will of the people. It will betray the true motivations of military aggression, and that will be useful for us. How will it look when cities across America pass ceasefire resolutions and the message from state and federal governments is the opposite? How will they defend that? I attended the public hearing for Hamden's ceasefire resolution, and multiple people used the example of New Haven's lack of a ceasefire resolution to undermine the testimonies of people telling us about their loved ones being murdered in Gaza right now. That was preventable. That could have been prevented by us. We need to think not only of what is officially within the city's control, but also the safety we create and the safety we withhold and why. Thank you.
Joe F.
Hello, my name's Joe Fine. I moved to New Haven 5 years ago. I'm a retired and disabled union lawyer. I rise in support of the resolution. I would, Russ, if I could. But I was doing it anyway. I've been active in peace and justice work for more than 50 years, including in the labor movement, including the peace movement, and supporting at least half a dozen anti-imperialist movements in various countries. But I confess to my own dismay that I was reluctant to tackle Israel most of that time until recent years. And as I sat there looking at my screen and my television and wanting to throw things at it and scream at it and say, I've got to do something, you folks enabled me to do something. Do I think, how much difference do I make? I think we all make a difference. But it makes a huge difference to me. I thank you for that. I started my arguable adulthood in my 20s working on the assembly line for Ford Motor Company. I was a rank and file member of the UAW. Eventually I finished college, went to law school, I became a union lawyer. I've worked with many unions, including some of the largest like the UAW and the service employees, the SEIU. Those are two large unions, between them representing hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people. We're amongst the first large unions in this country to endorse and support amongst their membership a full-time ceasefire now. I've never been of the dissident in the UAW, but I've never been prouder or more grateful to the labor movement than I am now. One reason I went into the labor movement instead of just sticking it out as a student activist, I figure that's where the power might be. I still think it might be, and sometimes it is. But you're not alone in this. It's not just young people. Thank you, young people. It's not just students. Thank you, students. There are other forces in society that are coming forward, and am I optimistic in general? No, but I'm hopeful, and I'm really hopeful now. Thank you all.